when you see people that are like that are really not interested in the performance, but just in communicating the message, it's so attractive. And Tony was one of these guys. Everybody in that room just wanted to hug him. Because it was like, no, this is what I got. This is who I am. That's it. Welcome to At the Table, the podcast that lives at the intersection between leadership, culture, organizational health, and teamwork. My name is Pat Lencioni. I'm your host, joined by my trusty co-host, Cody Thompson. How you doing today, Cody?
Good, Pat. They tell you to dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So I'm here in a golf polo. So
that's right. And if you don't do a good job today, I might make it easier for you to become a golfer.
I don't think it'll make me any better, but it will make me have to innovate right away, you know?
I love it. All righty, Cody, what's our topic today? I love our title.
It is Dissecting a Goat.
That's right. Like dissecting a frog in our sophomore year in high school. That's when it was for me. You know, when we're talking about the GOAT, we're talking about the greatest of all time. And people often ask, like, who's the best CEO you've ever worked with or that you've ever heard of? And everybody's fascinated by this in sports and entertainment and everything. The truth of the matter is, I always say the best CEO is somebody you've never heard of. And they're running an organization or they're doing a great job, but there's no reason that you know about them. And they're doing exactly what they need to do. And they're probably in an industry that you don't know about that's not all that sexy. It's because it's not fame that we're talking about here. And we recently, Cody, had a chance to hear from a CEO who's been a client of the Table Group for 13 years. And I heard him speak. He gave a presentation to all of our consultants. And I thought, he's the GOAT. He's certainly in the pen with the other GOATs. I don't know, but he was the one. And his name was Tony Mazzella. And we'll just put his name out there. You haven't heard of him. And he runs a company called Mazzella that does cranes and other lifting equipment. Okay? And so it's not something, but they're all over. They do a lot of business in in places all around the country in the United States. And they're a fabulous, very successful company at what they do. And so he came and did a presentation to our consultants and they asked him questions, and listening to him gave me insights into, like, I think we know what makes a CEO a GOAT. And, you know, when you dissect an animal, there's all kinds of stuff in there. There's a few organs. I'm really going with this analogy, Cody.
Yeah, you are. Way to go.
There's a few key organs that are most important. And we want to talk today about what we learned from Tony and something that all leaders these are universal traits that all leaders in any field of any kind can emulate.
Well, and Pat, before we dive into the innards of that, I will just say it was actually really fun to be with you. Like, I think in the last month or 6 weeks, we've been in different rooms together with higher profile CEOs, you know, different organizations and different industries. And I remember as Tony's sort of answering questions from some of our principal consultants, I tried to talk to you about, you know, like tried to whisper to you in the back of the room, and just watching you watch Tony talk about the way he was leading the Mazzella organization, you were like, hey, shh, just be quiet. I really want to lean into this, you know. And I think, and then you did a great job. So I love that we're talking about him, but even in the middle of that, you paused and said, like, you told him in the room, like, this is incredible what he's done. And so I love the idea that we get a chance to dissect what does that look like, and how can more, you know, not necessarily famous, but other people say, I want to emulate, I want to be like that, for the sake of the people I lead and the organization I lead. So I think this is going to be a blast.
So you could tell when I was watching him, huh?
Well, you shushed me when I tried to talk to you. So yeah.
Sorry for shushing.
No, that was great.
My wife loves it when I shush. Oh, she's like, that's what I love about you is shushing. I don't do that a lot. Okay, so the first thing that I noticed about Tony, and there's one particular way that he demonstrated this, but I will talk about a few, is he was without a doubt humble. Not in a way like he was trying to project humility. He just was humble. And as I said before, there was no desire. This guy clearly does not want to be well-known or famous. Mm-hmm. And so many CEOs, I remember years ago, a CEO came to me and he said, I want you to help my company become famous for being healthy. And I was like, I like everything in there but that word in the middle. Because the question is, do I want to be a great leader because it's what I do, and this gets to the motive, or do I want people to know that I'm a great leader? And Tony did not care that people didn't know who he was. He just is that way. And he shares credit. He gives credit to other people. He's not worried about his status. But the thing about him that I liked the most, Cody, and I think everybody in the room noticed it, people would ask him a question like, so how do you do this? And over the years, how have you done this? His answers were so succinct and brief. And he just had no desire to hold the floor. And they'd ask him a question. He'd just go, well, I just did this and this. Okay, next question. And it was just like, how often do we see people, and it terrifies me to think about it, to go on and on about something when all they need to do is answer the question and be done?
Yeah, I love the way you're articulating that, because humility was one of the key attributes that I felt like I noticed from Tony out of the gate. And there's something that even as you're saying that, and it related to the way he was answering questions, was there's a certain sense of peace that he has as a result of humility. Like it wasn't like he's in a room with Pat Lencioni and 50 of our principal consultants, and there's probably for any person probably a temptation to be performative. Like, oh, it'd be really cool to tell the story and for them to understand what I've done. You got none of that, and so the sentiment that I got was he wasn't gaining his identity in that room, and he wasn't leaving without it, regardless of what happened. He was just there to share his story and be very matter of fact and truthful, and that came across in spades.
Yeah, it's so funny that we're thinking about this. Matt and I were at Mass last week, and there was this guy that got up to give the homily or the sermon, and the way it ended was it was a really short and really good talk. And he was talking. And so this is what I think you should think about. And he turned around and walked away. And it was so cool. There was no performance at all. He was just like, that's it. That's all I got for you. And when you see people that are like that are really not interested in the performance, but just in communicating the message, it's so attractive. And Tony was one of these guys. Everybody in that room just wanted to hug him. It was like, no, this is what I got. This is who I am. That's it.
It's so interesting too, Pat, because like you think that there's a sentiment now, like if you were to say like what's the job of a CEO, somehow we've tacked on like PR to it. Like, oh, you have to be a good leader, you have to lead the organization, create clarity, vision, execute on all of these things. And also, can you be really compelling in a fireside chat? And can you be really compelling in front of a earnings call or something like that? And that's just not part of the job. Like it is part of the job in the sense that we've made it that, but not in the sense of can you run a great organization as a leader and not necessarily need to feel like you're selling yourself in front of every room.
Yeah, and it's a different kind of compelling, isn't it? Because he was compelling precisely because he wasn't trying to be.
Yep.
And that was just a beautiful thing. The other word that we described him with is he was so responsible. He took responsibility for that company. And this gets to the motive. He wasn't doing it. It was not about him. It was about like, oh no, I'm responsible for these people. He was genuinely interested in his employees and in their career. He would make difficult decisions that impacted their lives, and he knew it was hard, but he understood why. And he felt like I'm responsible for the well-being of the company, the success of the company, and these people's lives, even if it means I have to do difficult things that are hard for me to do.
I thought that was as he was talking, I was thinking through, the elements of the motive, because that resonated, or that I got that responsibility ethic from him right out of the gate. And it almost felt like it was he both felt responsible to do all the things that reward-centered leaders abdicate that you lay out in that book. But he had this added level of like ownership and responsibility. Like it's a family business. He inherited it from his dad and grandfather, and some of his children are in the business. And he just felt like there were even questions that we asked where he was like, yeah, I probably could have done that differently. And I probably should have, but he just owned all of the parts of it. And you could tell he really cared for everybody that worked in that organization.
And, in a family business, you can go, well, the grandfather, I'm his grandson, so I'm important and I'm in the family. And his was more like, oh no, I have to honor what they've done and honor these people. And it really is like it's going to be one way or the other. And his sense of, oh, this is on me. And I have to fly coach and sit in the middle seat when the company's numbers are down. There was just no sense of neither pride nor entitlement in him, which is so attractive. The third quality he had, I think we were all amazed. So I think Tony is 70 or 71. And he was one of the most curious leaders I've ever met. Talk about what are some of the ways that we could see how curious he was?
Well, I mean, he was before even our own principal consultant who had been doing work with him, what was kind of saying, hey, you should check out Working Genius. He told the story of how Tony actually called our consultant and said, hey, I'm going through the Working Genius certification, even before our consultant had put that in front of him as a possibility. He's out there exploring what's going on and how can we get better. And so there was just one of the ways that he was curious and wanted to continue to learn. The other one I was joking with you about before the podcast here is, I think he was 71 or 72, and he was talking about the Leader Advantage, which is our technology platform and partner that uses is a pretty, simple but sophisticated piece of technology that he uses himself, and was talking about the ways he's scaled organizational health in his company as a result of that. And I was joking that you couldn't turn on your microphone before we got started here, but Tony actually figured out the leadership software.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about it. He's like, no, I should learn this because it would serve my business. Mm-hmm. It's not well, I just like this kind of stuff. I'm into this. He runs a fairly good sized company. And when he learned about Working Genius, and this is not a commercial, it's a commercial for him, he goes, I'm going to go get certified in it. I think this will help me manage my people. I'm going to go invest 6 hours of my time to become an expert in this because I want to use it throughout my company and I want to know how to do it. And that's both humility and curiosity. He's he didn't say I want you to go do this and you take care of that. He said, no, I think I need to understand this. And the same with the leader software. He's I think if I'm going to run this company, I better know the tools that I'm using to do it. The last thing, Cody, I want to say is that he talked about how he's using artificial intelligence in his business.
Yeah.
Most people at his age are talking about artificial intelligence, about how terrible and stupid it is. And there are some things that are potentially terrible about it. But he was yeah, we're figuring out how to use artificial intelligence in our business. And I thought, who are you?
Yeah. Well, I think, Pat, to all of those things, the proactivity around getting certified himself, he didn't abdicate that to a team member and say, hey, this is important for the company, but you do it. The leader software, Leader Advantage software. We often, and this is part of the dissecting thing, when we go into companies and part of what we're doing is evaluating the leader. Are they going to own organizational health, right? That is a hallmark of whether or not our work actually works in an organization, is if the actual leader, the CEO, says, this is my responsibility. I can't push it on to another team member. I have to be the champion of organizational health in my company. And that's what he emulated, was he was not abdicating even an iota of what we do around the 4 disciplines. He was grabbing it with both hands. And so I think that's another way to think about it. If you're evaluating yourself as a leader, do I feel personally responsible for all of this?
Yes. I love to, and he honored us. He was well, the organizational health and the advantage and all these books, they really work well and we trust it and all this. But we know, and this is a sincere thing. It's it's only as good as the people who put it into practice, and they add so much. And so the heroes of organizational health are the leaders that use it. It's not us. It's not our consultants even. It's the CEO who goes, I am going to do this hard stuff, and I'm going to do it every day, day in and day out. And we are far more impressed with him than he should ever be with us. And it's just when somebody says, who's the best CEO ever? It's somebody like Tony Mazzella. There's others are out there, and you'll never hear about them because they promote themselves. You only hear about it because somebody works there or is a customer of theirs and says, these people are crazy amazing the way they do what they do. And it comes down to people like that.
Yeah. I will say, Pat, that's one of the unexpected favorite byproducts of this job, is just getting a chance to see so many leaders in different industries and so I love this conversation about how do you dissect those? Because it's not one formulaic, hey, if you have these 3 things, you're in the category of greatest of all time org health CEO. But he did exemplify all the things you wrote down in spades, and just the opportunity to see different leaders like that and start to glean what does it take to do that. And I think you summarize them well. Like humility is at the top.
You know something, Cody? I think it's interesting because I remember meeting Alan Mulally, who turned Ford around, and something that Tony and Alan had in common was, as important it is to understand your business, and Tony certainly understood, forklifts and strapping and all the different things you need it's lifting technology. He gets the business, and it's passed down through his family. He didn't talk about that at all, though. And Alan, when you talked to him about how he turned Ford around, everybody was like, "Do you know enough about cars? Boeing does planes," and he's like, "It's not about that. Yes, I have to learn the business, but it's really truly about me creating a healthy organization and making sure that we know enough about what we're doing, but that we create a culture." And I think it's really worth revisiting that. Very few times leaders are going to talk about the blocking and tackling of their business, because their job is to lead the people who take care of that blocking and tackling.
Yeah, it just goes back to the smart and healthy. And if lots of leaders over-index on the smart side, and the people that really lean into the healthy side get more out of the other side of the equation.
Yep. So I just want to say, Tony, thank you for being such a great example of this and giving us a goat to dissect today. You're definitely a goat. All righty. Thanks for listening to us, everybody. We love talking to you on the podcast, and we will see you next time on At the Table. God bless.